Hey guys, it's Eric. Happy New Year. It's January 1st, 2019. This is a time of year where it's hard to actually write the date correctly because I'm so inclined to write 2018. But okay, hopefully everyone had a good start to the year. I'm currently in a small village where the Wi-Fi is a little bit suboptimal, hence why I'm not streaming. But I figured I would try to record some video for YouTube. And I just got a comment. It was 35 minutes ago. Let me see if I can show this to the screen. Hey Eric, great videos as always. Could you do a tutorial explaining the basic variations of the Budapest? Really love your content. From Hugo GOUBERT. Okay, so Hugo GOUBERT, you asked a question at the right time because we're going to look at some basic variations of the Budapest Gambit, an opening which I've played so many times on stream, probably one of the most aggressive openings against d4. And it starts after d4. If I can access the board, d4, knight f6, c4. And the next move from black, which is pawn e5, is the start of the Budapest. Okay, there's some lag. Let me try that again, pawn e5. And the point of the opening is to, okay, first of all, get your opponent out of their comfort zone. If they're a d4 player, and I'm going to assume that most people who are watching this are around amateur level, below 2,000, probably somewhere between 1,000 to 2,000. So most d4 players in that rating range are having more solid tendency, don't necessarily like to be attacked so quickly. And the Budapest Gambit aims to grab the initiative really quickly for black at the expense of a pawn. Now, most of the times, white will take. Looks like a free pawn. It looks like a great deal, too, because white takes the pawn and attacks a knight on f6. And I remember when I first saw that this existed as an opening, I didn't want to go further. It looks completely nonsensical to give away a pawn and then move the same piece twice. But then the first person who showed it to me took a very good approach because they showed the most kind of natural looking line where black ends up winning before move 10. And by winning, I mean checkmating. So I just want to show just a natural looking variation, starting with knight g4, normal move, attacking the pawn, just wanting to recapture next. And in many cases, if black can regain the pawn, then the resulting development won't be too difficult. Black can normally develop pretty harmoniously if the pawn is won. So normally white will try and hold on to the pawn. Let's say bishop f4. Black can play knight c6, attacking the pawn even further. Most natural move for white is knight f3. And now there are two attackers and two defenders, so black can't win the pawn right away. But there is a nice follow-up here for black, bishop to b4 check. Developing and gaining time, forcing white to somehow block the check, and also preparing queen e7. It's important to develop the bishop first and then play queen e7 later so that the queen isn't blocking the bishop from f8. So white's most common move here is knight b to d2. And now this is where black can play queen e7. And now we see that there are three attackers on the pawn, queen and both knights. There are only two defenders. And there's actually no good way for white to defend the pawn, and black is just guaranteed to win a pawn here. Now, a lot of players as white will play a3, attempting to counterattack, attacking the bishop, maybe trying to grab the bishop pair. And from this position, it may seem like black has to move the bishop, but black actually has another option, which is not a bishop move. And the move to play for black is simply taking the pawn. Knight takes e5. You can actually take with either knight. Let's say knight g takes e5. And this was the very first variation I was shown. And at first it was a little confusing, like why not white? Just take the free bishop on b4. But then if you look closer, turns out black has an immediate win. If you don't see it, pause the video. Black to move. Checkmate in one move. Knight d3 is check and mate. Smothered mate. Very nice that the queen aligns with the king, pinning the e2 pawn, and there's no escape for white. Now, I've shown this to students, and usually when I show this to students, I tell them if they get to this position and their opponent plays a3, you should very quickly take on e5. There should be really no hesitation, especially if it's online. If it's online blitz or bullets, like just get ready to take on e5. Because a lot of players will assume that, that you just didn't realize the bishop was attacked, and they'll gladly take it without thinking twice, and then you mate them. So of course, white cannot take the bishop. The bishop is so-called poisonous on b4 after knight takes e5. Another common line here is knight takes e5. And then black can just take back. Black can leave the bishop hanging. If the bishop is still taken, then there's knight d3 mate still. And if white takes on e5 again, this is where it's important to be accurate, because you can't get away with just taking on e5, because then you lose your bishop and you're down a piece. So it's important to play an intermediate move. First, take the knight on d2 with check, and Lichess disconnected there, but now it's reconnected. And okay, after queen takes on d2, queen takes e5, and that was all just one big trade. If we evaluate the position, black's at least equal, maybe slightly preferable, because the queen is just very nicely placed in the center. Black can castle, play d6, and complete development without any real issues. So yeah, once I learned this one line, that was enough to start playing the Budapest. Because this is, okay, I'm not going to say that white will get mated most of the time, but white will usually go into some position like this most of the time, where black will usually win the pawn back, and best case scenario, mate white in how many moves? A takes b4, knight d3 mate. This is 8 moves. Just out of curiosity, I want to show just the Lichess opening explorer here. Let's switch the view. And if you're in a Lichess study, you can see how many times a certain position has occurred. People are challenging me, which I'm going to decline for now. Actually, it was just one person, but okay, so let's go back to this position. After a3, let's look up the position. I'm using the Lichess database, and it's a little bit slow because of the internet connection, but bear with me. Here we go. Knight g takes e5. Played almost 5,000 games. How many players took on b4? Oh man, over 1,000 players took on b4. And then knight d3 mate is not the only move. Some people played knight takes f3. That's got to be so unfortunate. Like getting to this position, having mate in one, and then taking on f3. Yeah, fortunately for most people, knight d3, the most common move. At least fortunate for the black players. And okay, 1,000 games ended like this. And then, of course, there's this other line where if black takes with the c knight, also very playable. I think most of the time this line could transpose. A takes b4, and then knight d3 mate. Again, a few people don't know what they're doing, but knight d3 finishes the game. So yeah, well over 1,000 people have gotten mated before move 10 as white against the Budapest. So going back here, it's an opening, at least it's an opening trap that's very easy to learn. And there's not too much memorization that's required. Like if you remember e5, the rest of the moves are very normal. Like just keep attacking the pawn, attack the pawn with the knights, give it check, play queen e7, defend the pawn, and then get to this position and set up the trap. Now the commenter on YouTube was asking, I think, for some basic variations. Oh, he was saying, could you do a tutorial explaining the basics? Okay, basic variations of the Budapest. Maybe I'll give one more variation, which is completely different, but also just a nice trap. Let's go back to the position after e5. Because there's some white players who are just scared of accepting gambits and will decline gambits at all costs. And there's a move that I've run into a good deal online, which is just not a good move for white, which is pawn d5. And this is not a tactical mistake, but it's more of a positional mistake. Like white's overextending, not developing any minor pieces, and especially after d5, this gives away the c5 square for the black bishop. And black can play bishop to c5 immediately, and already it's very pleasant. I mean, black is ready to castle next move, and white has nothing developed. And black can usually continue the setup with pawn d6, sometimes pawn c6 to try and undermine white's structure. Very often rook e8 will be played, and in many of my games I like to play knight b d7 to f8 to g6, and then later in the middle game get a kingside attack. But in this specific position, I want to show just one nice trap, which can emerge after bishop to g5, which looks like a nice move on the surface, like pins a knight, develops a piece. Unfortunately for white, this is just a terrible blunder, and it just walks into a simple tactic. And if you don't see it, feel free to pause the video and find the material winning move for black in this position. And I'm giving more time than normal because Lichess is reconnecting. If people can see this, reconnecting. So we're gonna wait until it's reconnected. Okay, it's reconnected. So the move is, actually there might be a few good moves for black, but just the easiest move to play is bishop takes f2. White is obliged to take, and then black has a choice after king takes f2 of either knight g4 or knight e4. I'm pretty sure people can visualize this as Lichess continues to try and reconnect. But okay, actually after king takes f2, I think knight e4 is the best option. And then black will very easily regain the bishop with queen takes g5 and just be up a pawn with great position. White will have lost castling rights. Just to show this on the board. Oh no, what's going on? Everything's blue. Oh, it flipped. We want to have the perspective of the winning side. King e1, let's say, and then queen takes g5. Okay, I'm clearly having some lag issues. If people want to see this trap, you can watch my previous video. I had a very similar trap in one game. Which I actually almost managed to lose as black, but then I won. It was like very topsy-turvy in nature. Anyway, I think I'm going to end it there because of the issues, and also just because I wanted to keep this simple and just show some inspirational variations to get people started who maybe had no knowledge on the Budapest before watching this video. So if you guys want to see more videos on the Budapest, or if there's any recommendations in terms of any sort of openings you want to learn, leave a comment below. I'm going to try and do more like viewer requests in terms of doing opening tutorials and answering questions. So let me know your feedback, and I'll see you guys in the next video.